The next group of things that I want to show you are just little gadgets that make my life a lot easier as a quilter. I go into the tool shops that the men go in. If a man does it, they're going to find an easier way to do it. If a woman does it, they're not. So go in the men's tool shop and see what all they have in there. This is one of those key ring holders that the men wear on their belt, you know, and it makes them look really important the more keys they have on them. But it retracts. It will clip onto your collar or your vest or whatever. You can put your scissors or whatever you use a lot, you can put on there. And it makes it nice. You can pull your scissors out, use it, and it will retract back up on your vest there out of your way, especially if you're using a long arm machine. But sewing anywhere, it keeps them at hand but not in the way. So this is wonderful. These are good hints for your friends who are quilters too. Now this is a thread cone holder. Let me get it where you can see it. This is the official thing. You put your cone of thread here, run it up through here, and then to your sewing machine. This is for thread that has to feed off the top, not regular sewing thread. This is a must for those types of threads. You can buy thread in bulk, but you have to have this to use. One day I was using some decorative threads, and I did not have a thread cone holder. And I was desperate. I was not going to go to town right then. And I thought, what have I got in here that could be a thread cone holder? I had a 2-liter bottle, and since it was a small cone of decorative thread, I just cut me a window in here so I could put the thread in there and then fed it up through the top and over to my machine, and it worked great. If you want to use a larger cone of thread, you have the 2-liter version. You also get to drink the soda that's in it before you use it. This is my going green thread holder. But you can see there's a window cut out here in the front. You set your thread in there. I'm going to get some of that clear stuff that hardens up and put in the bottom to make it a little bottom heavy, and then I'll be thrilled with it. But your thread comes out, goes straight over to your sewing machine, and you thread your machine and go just right on like you were. Now, when you're doing applique or something that you might need to stick something down, but you don't want to sew it yet, you want to keep it in place, I like this for raw edge applique. I have found something called liquid stitch. This is like a white Elmer's glue. You want to leave it in just as thin of a streak as you can and just go around the back edge of your applique, and then when you stick it down, iron it, and it will stay in place, and then you can raw edge over it, and you won't have that fusible all over the back. You just have a little bit around the edges. So I love my liquid stitch. Water-soluble thread. This is great for a lot of different things. Use it for more than you think about. It's good for trapunto, and if you don't know that, you can Google on the internet and find that out. When it gets wet, it dissolves. Now, it takes a little bit of water, but don't do something that's going to be there a long time and in high humidity dissolve it for you. You can also use it for basting your quilt layers together if you're going to hand quilt, and then when you're done, you rinse it and you're good. You can use it in the top and bottom, or the top and then use regular thread in the bottom. The other use for it, I saw the other day, they were doing some applique, and they had a lot of the same pieces. And they would cut their 2 fabrics bigger and put their template, you know, their wax paper template, freezer paper template on there. And the good sides of the fabrics were together, and then the template. And then they would sew it just on the outside of the paper template with water-soluble thread in one side and regular thread in the other one. Then they would leave an opening to turn it. They would trim it, turn it, dry iron it to make sure all the points are out like you want them. And then when you're done, spray it with starch or with water and iron it really well to steam it in. And you have 2 perfectly turned under applique pieces that will now come apart because the thread has dissolved. And then you can put them where you want them and applique them down, and you don't have to worry about the curves turning just right or anything. It is great. So if you want to do a little bit of applique, try it with your water-soluble thread. I have just a couple of other items. I looked around the shop and said, well, let me tell them about these too. One of them is basting spray. This is the type of spray that you can put on your applique pieces to hold them in place until you can stitch around them. It also holds your layers together. I will recommend that you get one if you have problems with fumes. Be in a well-ventilated area. Some of them have stronger odors than others. But try some of this for different things. Another thing I like to use it for, the type you use for applique, if I'm using a ruler with my machine or a template and I'm trying to go around something and it slides, if you will just get a couple of little squirts on there and let it dry just a minute, it will give it a tackiness so that it's easier for you to work around the templates instead of them sliding and being a hard time. The other thing you can use is something called Invisigrip. This comes in clear sheets like thick saran wrap, I guess you would say. And you cut it to fit the back of your ruler, and it just gives it a little bit of a tackiness. It's clear so you can still see through your template, but it helps you a lot with that. The other thing, I try to lighten up my classes because people come in there just so tense and they have to do it just so right. I tell them, relax, it's supposed to be fun. And then I have my easy button to make sure
that was easy.
It's always easy. Okay, now we're up to the designing part. We need to know how to get what we want onto our quilt top when we quilt it, whether we're drawing it on, we're using design aids, or practicing to do our stitches on our long arm. One of the easiest things you can do to practice your long arming is to draw it on doodle pads. Well, I decided doodle pads took up too much room and they weren't conducive to what I wanted to do. I bought this dry erase board at a discount store and used the dry erase pens. When you draw on them, you can just practice and then wipe it off with an eraser or a Kleenex or whatever towel, and then draw again. If you're not sure that what you're doing is going to work, you can practice it and practice it until you get it like you want it. Then when you go to your machine, it will automatically work out. You'll be able to do it easier. If you don't have a dry erase board and you have access to a laminator, just laminate some white paper and you've got your little practice dry erase board, and that works really well. I use that with some of my classes. That way everyone can practice before they get busy with it. The next thing I want to talk about is a digital camera. If you have a digital camera, it's great, but I have this older one. You can pick them up. A lot of people give them to you. They want the smaller ones now. This one I like because it uses, let's see if I've got one in there. Yes, an old floppy disk. We have floppy disks everywhere because nothing uses them anymore. I got an external floppy for my computer so I could still use floppy disks. I can put all of one type of quilt picture on here or whatever, pop it in my computer and pull it up and do what I want to do with it. If I want to send it to the customer and say, hey, your quilt is ready, they get to see what the quilt looks like and it gets them excited and they come on in and pick it up. But these cameras are really nice. Another thing you want this for, take pictures of your quilts when you're done. Take pictures of your quilting when it's done. Get some close-ups of your quilting stitches. I have some on my website just so people can go and look at the stitching to see if they want to let me quilt their quilt or to get ideas from. Think of different ways you can put things together. The other thing this is good for is if you're doing a large quilt and you're not sure how you're going to quilt it and you can't remember the pattern that's on it, maybe it's not a routine pattern, you can take a digital picture right quick, run off a quick copy on your computer and hold it up there next to where you're working and you'll know which part of the quilt you're working on. You need, in this day and time, a copier or scanner or something to be able to work on your quilts. This is a converter. You can buy these at some of the quilt shops. You put the size that your original is. If I have a 5-inch motif and I want to change it to a 10-inch, the inner circle is on the 5 and I line it up with the 10. And in this window it says I need to put my copier on 200% and it will make it the right size. Remember when you do this, you don't want your motif the exact size of your block. Leave a little bit of edge around it. Maybe make it 4, 4.5 for the finished. But these are really nice for that.